Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dhammaya, Namo Sanghaya. Welcome, dear community, to this live Buddhist spiritual meditation gathering happening here in the present moment, which is an obscure idea. What is the present moment? But anyway, we're in the present moment, and we are in the south of Italy at the Tabarwa Meditation Center under the overall spiritual guidance and direction of Sayadaw Ashin Otamasara, who is my teacher. I am Bhante Warapanyo, and I am an American Buddhist monk and a spiritual leader and meditation teacher. Preparing oneself for listening is a lot like not speaking and not talking about things, and we can't, most of us, control to a particularly high degree to not think about things, but we can be more open to not giving unnecessary importance to thinking about things. And in approaching the spiritual life and approaching a spiritual teacher or a meditation teacher, you may find it helpful to look up on Google what reverence is. And what does it mean to be reverential, and what does it mean to step into a place of reverence within oneself? And we may have experienced this in our lives previously in the material world by coming across a vast vista. Or we may have experienced great difficulty or fear at a certain point in our lives, and then experienced the relief from that great fear. And when you experience that in a dramatic way, so that the relief from that fear is just as dramatic as the fear was, what you may find is that you feel a lot of reverence for not being in a state of fear, not being in a state of tension, and not relying on the understanding or the interpretation of your own thoughts and your own mind. This is difficult, and the reality is that most people who are concerned with spirituality, whatever that may be, are not successful in spirituality. In the same way that most people that are involved in the field of construction or building things are primarily laborers, and rarely are they artisans, and rarely are they business leaders. It's very unusual for that to take place. And the same is true in the realm of spiritual realization or making progress on the path to enlightenment. It is rare, it is uncommon. Most of the people that you come across in your life are not delusional. They are delusional. And if you are sitting here listening to this, to a very great and vast degree, you are delusional. And when we hear this, or when someone may say this in a public space or in a public discord, we may feel a sense of protest. I'm delusional. Don't you know who I am? And the reality is that we may be in a position to know about ourselves by practicing meditation seriously, for example. We may be in a position to know about ourselves by giving up a lot of the desires that control us, the habit energies that control us. And if we are not able to disidentify with mental phenomena or material phenomena, for example, if we are holding up an orange and we are not able to hold the orange without being attached to it or confused about it, then we do not know about ourselves. So the question is, how do you hold yourself, or how do you experience yourself without being attached to yourself? And that brings up the question, what is the self anyway? Is that an assumption? Is that an experience? And what kind of experience is that? What kind of experience are you having right now, for example? So we have some people in the Dhamma hall right now. We're very blessed to have a large, considerably large gathering online and in person as well, which supports the depth of our inspiration. We can see how many people are watching live with us, and we can experience how many people are in the room with us at this moment, and that is inspiring. Now, if someone in this room were to defecate upon themselves or urinate upon themselves, it is very likely that that person would be in a state of panic. And oh my gosh, I've defecated upon myself. And what am I going to do now? But the reality is that defecating is normal. And if someone were to defecate upon themselves in this room, well, they may have a panic response, but they may also be able to say, I have defecated on myself. I'm going to go and take a shower. And you know what, everyone? It's not that big a deal. And which one would be better? And which one would be more in line with perhaps how we've been taught to act and how our culture has told us that we are supposed to act, right? That when we defecate on ourselves, we should be ashamed, or we should be in a state of panic, or we should be worrying about what other people think about our shit. But in fact, rather than worrying about what you may think about your shit or what other people may think about your shit, perhaps you should do just like you do in the toilet. Just shit and flush it and move on with your life. And of course, bidets are, a better way to clean yourself than toilet paper in general, right? If you had shit on your hands, would you get some thin tissues from the kitchen and wipe off your hands and then go to the restaurant to go back to eating your meal? That's a little bit insane. So anyway, you may consider to get a bidet or a bum gun, as it is often called in Thailand or in Southeast Asia. So what is meditation, and what is Buddhism, and what is spirituality, and what is enlightenment? Well, it's not other than this. So what is this? What is the experience of this? Is it an idea that you have about yourself? Is this an idea that you have about yourself? You're experiencing it, and so if you're experiencing this, and it's clearly not an idea that you have about yourself, then what is so important about these ideas that you have about yourself in general? If this, which seems to be important for whatever reason, seems to be something you're interested in and vitally interested in, is not an idea about yourself, then perhaps you should ask, why am I so focused on ideas that I have about myself? And what is the way of giving up or putting down actively that which we are holding on to moment by moment. What is the good way to do that? Well, the best way to do that as a normal person is through generosity. Because as a normal person in the world, we do not exist separately from the continuum of everything. And so whatever workable model we develop or we practice concerned with letting go of that which we are holding on to unnecessarily must be in relationship to community. And so what is a way to practice letting go of what we hold on to in relationship with community, the community that we find in the world? It is something called sharing out or giving out or helping out or offering out, giving away. It's something called generosity. And we are not successful on the spiritual path. And we are particularly delusional because our lives are not infused with and our lives are not particularly emphasizing generosity. That is why we do not understand Buddhism, and that is why we are so aggressive. Because instead of realizing the fruit of community through generosity, we are trying to realize the fruit of this experience of our lives by holding on to things. And things cannot be held onto for any particular period of time, because we do not control time, and we do not control things, and we do not control trees. And we've reached such a degenerate point in our human society that we also don't know how to work together with trees. For example, people are in a state of delusion where the question of why is that tree over there instead of over here seems to be realistic or important, instead of being open to see how ridiculous that question is. Why are you doing this? Why are you wearing that? This is called the emperor's toilet. This is called just taking a shit. In the West, we are fixated on meditation. We are fixated on the notion of mindfulness without community, without spiritual teachings, without spiritual teachers, without having an active, deep, meaningful, sustained relationship with generosity. Generosity is a dirty word. People don't like when they are reminded to be generous. People don't like when they are encouraged to be generous. People are angry about it. How dare you encourage me to be generous? How dare you encourage me to volunteer? How dare you encourage me to help? Now, if you can detach from yourself, then there are other ways that you can help that are more subtle and more important than cleaning toilets. But cleaning toilets is very important. I would like to have a clean toilet. I would like to have a clean room. So clearly it's somewhat important, but it's far less important than learning how to not grasp onto thoughts and ideas unnecessarily. Thoughts and ideas are necessary as far as they can be used to help people, as far as they can be used to be generous. Because the notion of helping people is also the notion of colonization. It is also the notion of genocide. It is also the notion of, well, that looks good, so let me help you. Let me help you give me what I want. Let me help you get what I want. That is a kind of degenerate insanity. And the issue with the intellect and the issue with the psychological notions that we hold about ourselves and about the world is that they are faulty in the same way that climbing a tree and trying to live in it without making preparations to do so is faulty. It's not going to work. In the same way that planting seeds by thinking about planting seeds in the soil does not work. That is not the way that we experience life. Thought or thinking about things and having notions and ideas about people, places, situations, and environments are a insubstantial portion of our direct experience. For example, your feces, which if you do not pass them, cannot keep from killing you, are not composed of thought. Your feces do not depend on thought, and yet you rely on your feces more than you rely on the ideas that you have about yourself and others. Without feces, you would be dead. Without being able to pass feces, you would die. Now, we should not try to understand things, because trying to understand things is not what children do. Children listen, children experience, and through that, children can learn 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 languages, depending on their karmic affinities, naturally, without effort, by being in a community that speaks those languages and supports those children to learn how to communicate in those languages. So listening is not about understanding things in the same way that understanding things doesn't mean that you've ever listened. A lot of people understand all kinds of things and they don't know what they're talking about. And they don't actually understand the things that they think that they understand, mainly because they are stuck on understanding things. Well, how can things be understood? How can this hat be understood? Do you understand this hat? Is this hat not real, tangible? I appreciate this hat. This is an important hat to me that I wear on my head to prevent being cold. So hi is not enough. How are you is not enough. You need to become a generous person. You need to become a volunteer, a donor, a helper, a giver. And we think that this is some kind of trap that brings benefit to one particular person. But this is primarily talking about the subtlety of your psychology that is stuck on grasping on things that are not only not valuable, but that are primarily about your own ideas and perceptions of the world. And most people's ideas and perceptions of the world are irrelevant to helping in a meaningful way. Mostly that's the case. Why is that the case? Well, in America, we have a society that values power over goodness. We have a society that values violence over nonviolence. We have in ourselves such a state of mind that we feel it is more important to get what we want than to give what we have. And that is why we suffer so much. That is why our children suffer so much. Because we think that children are our possessions, because they are different than us in some way. But just because something is different, and especially just because you don't understand something, doesn't mean that that thing is your possession. It explicitly means that that thing is not understood and it cannot be possessed. So it's a very exciting and interesting time. Uh, I am making progress on my spiritual path, and many members of our community are also making progress on the spiritual path. Some are known and some are unknown. The degree to which we make progress is also the degree to which we can exercise generosity to a greater and greater degree without being fixated on our preferences, without being stuck on our model for what I need to survive. And we should entertain the idea that we are not supposed to be survivors, that being a survivor comes from a scarcity mentality, and that the reality is that there are more than enough resources to go around. So our work in this life is not to survive, it is to thrive. It is to cultivate abundance. And we will not be skillful to cultivate abundance until we can prioritize sharing what we have rather than getting what we want. And we do this in a sustained way, and we do this in a careful way. Now, if we do not do this, concerned with the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, and it will take time for you to understand these words. Even though I explain them, you won't be able to fully understand them. If we are not concerned with the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, then we may perhaps need to be concerned with Western psychology, which is a disgusting system. Absolutely disgusting. Absolutely vile. Shit is also absolutely disgusting. And if we could somehow gather up all of our shit, for example, everyone in this room or the 27 people that happen to be here online, if we were to perhaps gather up all of our disgusting shit and make a huge pile of human ore and compost our feces, and over a period of 10, 20, or 30 years, cultivate mango and durian trees and nourish them with our feces, I tell you what, I bet that'd be some good fruit. So it's not to say that Western psychology is to be rejected, but to look at it in a realistic way and to not rely on that, right? I don't rely on a system of science in which lobotomies were kind of a working model for, let's try to figure things out. Let's take a big metal ice pick and stick it in somebody's brain and twinkle it around. And you know what? That kind of makes sense. So we should move forward, we should march forward with resiliency, authenticity, sincerity, and dedication, with a real reverence for generosity, and looking more and more at what that means in our own lives towards refuge in the Triple Gem. Refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. If you do this, certainly, I'm a young monk. I'm 31 years old. It's not like I have a bunch of money. And I can support 100 plus people today. It's going to take some time to work it all out, but to be supported for the rest of their lives and not be a part of a cult, more so than you're a part of a cult of your own delusional, greedy, angry, tense mind. So what is that? That if 100 people reach out to me today, being a young 31-year-old American Buddhist monk who doesn't have a bunch of money, I can't put you up somewhere in a hotel, can make arrangements for 100 people to go and live the rest of their lives, um, helping others and helping themselves and having their basic needs met. And yeah, some of you will die from mosquito viruses or from, we had a really beautiful hearted Burmese nun who recently died from colon cancer. And I can remember being with her in Hanoi, Vietnam, the past year for our first of its kind 3-month Vasa Rains Retreat Theravada program in Hanoi, supported by the government and the Buddhist Council of Vietnam, where one night I was lying down and a little bit tired and a little bit disenchanted, and the master was conducting a sharing ceremony. And she was speaking through the microphone, and her voice provoked a kind of tension in me, but it was a tension of recognizing the depth and heart of her sharing. And I was so inspired by that that I had to go out there and I had to look at her. And I wanted to hear her voice as I was looking at her and that she was looking at me. I wanted to experience that because there was such a vibrational and heart tonality to her sharing. Whether or not she was a realized person or not was irrelevant to that she was on the path and she had taken refuge. And she died today, apparently, from colon cancer. So the degree to which I am willing to be generous to you, in most cases, far outweighs the degree in which you are willing or able to be generous to me. That's why I can encourage people to be generous in the way that I do. And if you don't believe that, well, let's try. Let's see. Everybody needs food, don't they? Everybody needs shelter, don't they? And something that we don't really know about in the West is spiritual protection, spiritually protected environments. Living in Portland or living in Los Angeles or living in the Bronx or something like that. I mean, we can't even talk about it because it's not comprehensible. We don't have it, right? And that, well, we have this ideal of having a penthouse in New York, and we should have a Tabarwa penthouse in New York. We should work on that. We've got one in Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur. It's a beautiful place. It'd be very useful to have that in New York City. But anyway, this ideal of some lofty elevator and being stuck in the clouds on a high rise, well, that can be fine. But I was in Sri Lanka recently, and I went to the pine forest nearby a monastery that was on top of a mountain. And I've shared some of the vistas from that view recently. And I was sitting there with these other monks, and we were discussing the Dhamma, and it was a real place of reverence and generosity with each other, and even a kind of sharpness to the exploration that was defined by the generosity, in that we were not fixated on comparing our views as much as we were exploring our views. And this is not easy to do, but we can learn how to do it. And I just commented how we were truly in a spiritually protected environment. There was no cartel. There was no day laborers. There was no businessmen or businesswomen. There was no American government. There was no American hell prison system at all. And staying in that place for a sustained period of time would just require staying there. There was nothing of agents of greed, anger, and desire around that had any position of authority. They could not reach us at all. And these kinds of places, the recognition that these kinds of places exist gives us an opportunity to detach from our schizophrenia, to detach from our chronic anxiety disorder, to detach from our chronic depressive disorder, to detach from the fear of the psychosomatic spiritual pollution that surrounds us in Western countries, in the suburbs, in the cities, in the political sphere, at the encampment in UCLA. Good luck. So, as much as we can grit our teeth and eat shit, that is how much we will recognize that we should not eat shit. That it is not in the matter of should, but rather in the matter of unnecessariness. And that the ways that we are living that provoke a continuous string of self-fixation that leads to grasping and attachment, and that leads to anxiety and disorder of fixation on psychological notions that are not based on truth or mindfulness and detachment. We have to learn how to stop ourselves from continuing on these wrong paths and be open to the realization that many of us are broken children, and that many broken children that are within us and around us came up in environments in which they could not leave. They could not abandon their life that was so horrible and sad and disappointing. For example, I do not have memories of most of my childhood. I don't know why that is, but I don't have memories about that most of my childhood, which is why my capacity to speak about myself is limited. So recognizing this, not only this wounded and broken child that cannot escape within ourselves, but also recognizing that that is a societal constraint that we have not addressed in any meaningful way. And Western psychology addressed that in the way of delusional, greedy, angry, abusive parents taking their children to Western psychologists and getting them prescribed SSRIs and amphetamines to deal with their anxiety and depression. So clearly, that's not what I want to do. If you are prescribing a medicine that you are unwilling to take, then your fear about that medicine is more telling than the benefits of that medicine or the efficacy or safety of that medicine. That's a good golden rule. Here, child, drink this tea. Mama, Papa, will you drink it first? I'm not drinking that. Hell no. So, may want to look at that. So recognizing this fractured child inside of ourselves that cannot escape, and this fractured child in the world that cannot escape, perhaps we should be brave enough to leave. Perhaps we should be brave enough to abandon. Perhaps we should be brave enough to forgive the people that we have developed unnecessary attachments with. You can do what you like, but you should not expect to have much progress. And from my perspective, my progress is for everyone. My heart is for everyone. My life is for everyone. That is why detaching from myself is not about doing what other people tell me to do. My life and willingness to detach from myself is about giving people permission to be who they are without needing to go anywhere or do anything or make judgments about anything at all. And that not making judgments about anything at all and crawling on the floor as a child or as someone in a state of innocence is just as worthwhile of reverence as some fool gallivanting around on a horse with a sword, with a stupid hat and a mustache. And of course, we have to make a choice as a society inside of ourselves. What really do we want to pay reverence to? The innocence of children or the degeneracy of colonizers and lobotomists and those who continue to hold the banner of those traditions, whether they know it or not? The efficacy of Western psychology is the intention to help people. And beyond that, the efficacy is on a case-by-case basis, and really working together with pharmaceutical industries to distribute medicines that you yourself would never take, even under duress, is maybe not so good. And anyway, this is not to reject Western medicine. You know, there's always this stupid string of thought that, someone has given me some advice, so I guess I should be a crazy person, or I should be a fool, or, I should just kind of become ridiculously unstable and go off into the forest and die in a ditch. You should try to do your very best to get as much help as you can. And it's not going to work to blame anyone about your lack of ability to help yourself. That's not going to help anything. So rather than relying on our own understanding and relying on what we think we should do, or relying on what other people think we should do, we should try to develop a relationship with listening. We should try to develop a relationship with Buddhism. Or don't. But that's what I recommend. And if you want to listen to me, and if you want to follow me, and if you want to take refuge in me as a spiritual teacher, then you should try to do what I say. Otherwise, you will waste your time being here, or you will waste your time commenting on things, or you will waste your time making judgments about things. It is like going to a cafe that sells a certain kind of pastry, and going into that cafe, taking a bite of the pastry and saying, well, this is not very good. I don't want to eat here. And then you go there the next day and you bother the person who is there. How about you just go away and don't come back? How about you do that instead? And if we were brazen enough to see how stupid it is to carry around this big suitcase of importance on preferences, our personal preferences with us, maybe we would understand that people need water, that children need companionship and friendship from wise, friendly people who know how to detach. People who know not how just to tell the child to put down what they pick up, but know how to tell themselves to put down what they are picking up mentally or physically or verbally, moment by moment. And I'll be here in Tabarwa, South Italy for 1 more month. And then I'll be going to the USA with my teacher, my master, and I hope that we'll be able to make arrangements for some of our Sangha members in the US to come and meet the master. We'll be on a Dhamma trip there for about a few weeks, and there will be opportunities to make invitations and of course follow up with the invitation from me. And over the coming days, we will begin to research together childism, which is the discrimination based on age, discrimination towards children. And this is something I recently came across, and I think it's a very groundbreaking work. It's a book called Childism that we'll be going into together here on the YouTube channel. And through Discord. So you can try to get a copy of that book ahead of time. But as usual, I will facilitate it and I will read through it and we will discuss it. A fish who bites a hook gets caught. A shark that bites a hook gets a piercing. Do you want to be a shark or a fish? Do you want to be brave to take a bite out of the whale of suffering that is exploding within you moment by moment? Or do you want to be a fish that keeps biting on hooks with bait? Now, how we meditate from this position and from this realm is that we are open to not chasing or moving towards or moving away from anything in particular. We are abiding in the realm of non-reliance on discrimination. So that breathing or not breathing is less important than the way that it is right now. You may breathe in such a way that you do not fixate on discriminatory thought. And this is to be the big bad shark. That you are not some fool that is constantly, like a fish, biting onto hooks and being pulled away from reality or the heart of your life. Tension is useful for relaxation, but if you try to use tension to relax, you may find that you have a problem with tension, which is the tension. The real tension, the tension in your mind, which will build up into a sense of frustration, which will discourage you from being a shark that bites hooks and rips the line, breaks the tether. Stand your ground. And that we're not just doing this for ourselves. So, for example, we have a few people here in the Dhamma Hall, and we have more than 30 people watching online. Steel your resolve for everyone that is here, so that not only can we have some kind of beneficial experience, but that we can lay the groundwork for developing a community of awakening for the long term. And you may think that what we rely on, or what we should rely on, is some kind of movie-based perception about community or our experiences. But in fact, inseparability is not able to produce movies of separation. Do not be separate from everything, and everything will support you. Unsatisfactoriness will support you. Unsatisfactoriness will allow you to be willing to take the bitter medicine of your life. And you won't need to rummage around in the toilet looking for parasites in your shit. You won't need to be fearful about death, because you will have such an understanding that death is what makes living full of life. And so the gift of having a spiritual teacher and being in a position like this is that you don't need to think. You do not need to talk. You do not need to share your opinion. You do not need to make judgments. You do not need to hold up your delusions as being important. And it's not under a threat of force. It's under a invitation to listen. Invitations are not forms of aggression. True invitations. I can teach this way, and people are following me and listening to me and supporting me and having success under my banner because I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in Sayadaw Ashin Otamasara. I take refuge in Master Ajahn Brahm. I take refuge in Master Thich Nhat Hanh. I take refuge in the Zen Master Poha Sunim. I follow them in such a way that I give up my sword and give up my life to follow and to listen. That is why I can teach in this way. That is why I am becoming more successful. Not because I read some books, not because I have some big ego, big idea about myself. Trust me. You won't find me rummaging around in my shit. I've eaten enough of it. So, if you want to be similarly empowered and similarly realized in whatever way I may or may not be realized, you need to follow. You need to listen. You need to practice generosity in a profound way that is similar to the notion of abandoning your life. Abandoning your life is not about rejecting anything or anyone or any place or any person, in the same way that death is not about rejecting anything or anyone or any person. Death is all inclusive. And so also detachment is inclusivity, real inclusivity. And it gives us the capacity to be dynamically inclusive to a variety of needs that human beings and the environment has. We have a society and a culture of combat. The fetishization and the romanticization of combat and violence is something that is very important in our society and in our culture. We love violence. We celebrate killing. We celebrate horror. We celebrate greed. We celebrate anger to power. We celebrate scamming and tricking. We celebrate cheating as long as it correlates with power and authority. Stop being greedy. Start being more willing to try to do actions of great generosity. and we will find out as a community what the greatest action of generosity that we can do together will be. That is our work, that is our mission. And we don't just need consumers of Bante's content. We don't just need likers and dislikers. We don't just need commenters or praisers. We don't just need donors. We need those who have steeled their resolve so that we may help children and women and impoverished people that are in poverty. And burning with a fiery passion this notion that helping those in poverty is some kind of stupid and pointless thing to focus on. And that we as Western people, that we people of ability and means are somehow stupid and foolish to think that we should try to use our money to help other people. Burning it out, stealing our resolve. Then we may find that we get a chance to taste the durian and the mango of our sweet shit. So that's my Dhamma talk for today. And we'll open up the space for any questions that people may have, or any sharing of experience. And for those watching along at home, we have about 30 people. This was I think, a beneficial talk. And if you felt so also, please consider to leave a like on the YouTube channel so that more people may come across this content, so that more people may come across this community. And you may also look to the description of this video to find out our community's website, where you may primarily find a supporting lattice for walking the path, and there are also directions there for which you can support. Good. So let's finish with paying homage to the Buddha, and then we will share the merit after we pay homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. May the merits that we have generated and cultivated up to this point be dedicated and shared out in all directions and towards all beings. May they receive, rejoice, and share in these merits. May it be so known that these merits are received, rejoiced in, and shared out. May it be, may it be, may it truly be. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dhammaya, Namo Sanghaya. Thank you, dear Sangha, and may we continue. Okay?